following the Netflix series, the Menendez Brothers could be released. The district attorney has announced that he will make a decision on Friday on whether or not the resentencing of the brothers will actually occur. 53-year-old Erik and 56-year-old Lyle Menendez currently serving life sentences without parole. Joining us this morning as our plus one to discuss all of this is a former federal prosecutor, Stephen Cazares. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
We have a ton of questions, so I hope you're ready for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we first talk about what is leading to the fact that there might be a new trial, a resentencing of sorts. What is the evidence here?
Yeah, some of this isn't new. So back in May of 2023, the brothers filed this motion for habeas corpus, so basically for a new trial or to vacate their sentence. And they based it on two pieces of new evidence that they allege is new. One being a letter that Erik wrote to his cousin, Andy Kano, in the months before the murder, where he told his cousin he was still being abused that late. And then Roy Rossello, former member of Menudo, that was managed by RCA, where the father, Jose, was an executive, claims the father was abusing him back in the early mid-'80s, which suggests consistency with what the brothers alleged, that they were abused by Jose as well.
Why is all this evidence coming to light now?
You know, it's interesting. The letter apparently was obviously Erik wrote it, so theoretically he would have known about it, but it went to Andy. I think the mother was on a Barbara Walters special maybe 5-7 years ago when the letter came to light, and it turned out the brothers' lawyers weren't aware of the letter. And so that's their argument for why it's new. And then the Roy Rossello evidence, this is, you know, obviously if he was abused, that's difficult to come forward with those sort of things. He now has, and the brothers didn't have access to his statements as well.
You know, this all begs the question of why the attention, you know, on this case. And at the time, this was one of the most televised cases, right? We didn't have all like court TV and all of those things that we're seeing now. So there was a lot of attention on the case at the time. And now the Netflix series. And so this case has been scrutinized, has been publicized for so long. Do you think that's why it's getting the attention that it's getting?
I mean, I think it's a confluence of issues. The Netflix issue and the fact that it's in the media and it's very popular. The public is really attached to the story. It's revived the life of the story, but it's also in LA, it's an election year. We have a DA who's being challenged. The DA has been criticized a little bit for some of his justice reform policies, and he's being challenged by someone who I actually know very personally who's challenging him on some of those issues. And, you know, there was a little bit of pressure on the DA to make a statement about this stuff just in the weeks after the special came out. And he has made some statements already in the public, as you probably know, where he's suggested maybe the brothers shouldn't be in jail for the rest of their lives.
I guess I'm just wondering if any of this would be happening if it weren't for that Netflix series and the documentary that came out.
Well, it's a good question, because the motion was in May 23, and it sat for many, many months. It kept getting continued, extended. And only after the Netflix special came out did the DA make comments, and all of a sudden, kind of the momentum pushing it forward started.
And the court of public opinion, how much does this play a role in all of this?
I mean, it does, because our public officials, our DA, even our judges in state courts, they're elected. So they do feel pressure. That's the way the system's built, unlike the federal system, where they have lifetime appointments. It's a different system, so they're kind of responding to that. And again, because the DA in Los Angeles has been criticized a little bit for his justice reform issues. You know, which way will he go on this? Who knows? I think he just said a day or two ago that he's going to give us an answer on his office's response in the next day or two.
I want to go back about 30 years when all this first happened, right? Because there's a big social difference between the first trial, which ended up in a hung jury, and the second trial. O.J. Simpson verdict came out. In between those two trials, how much of that had to do with the verdict that we saw in the second trial?
I mean, I think it had to at some level. I mean, you've got to understand, at the time when the O.J. acquittals happened, I think people were shocked that had happened. The first trial ended up in hung juries. A lot of defense evidence came into the first trial. The second trial post-O.J., a lot of that defense evidence was excluded. Remember, it's the same judge, Judge Weisberg, also did the Rodney King trial of the officers who were accused of beating Rodney King, and they were acquitted as well. Maybe there was a little pressure on him, so he took a different tack on the second trial. I think it's inevitable that the outcome in the O.J. trial had some impact on the views and the way the second case was tried.
Well, sticking to that theme here, the fact that in the second trial they didn't allow evidence of any sexual abuse, alleged sexual abuse, to be presented. I mean, wasn't the entire case built on that? So by taking that away, how could you try that case?
They allowed some of it, a little bit. Andy Kano, the cousin, still did testify, but the government didn't have to worry about all that corroborating evidence. They just called him a liar. And it stuck.
That was it?
And that was basically it. They called him a liar, said Erik was a liar, and because he didn't have all the corroborating evidence you had in the first trial, it was easier for a jury to believe that. But in the second trial also, the judge did not let the jury vote on murder 1, murder 2, or manslaughter. They were given murder 1 or nothing. So that's a lot more pressure on the jury to come to some sort of positive outcome. Otherwise, they let him walk.
And at the time, times were very different. You didn't think that men could be sexually abused or sexually assaulted at that time. Times have changed right now. And that's why we're also taking a look again at this case in a very different lens.
Sure.
We also think about all those cases that don't have the Hollywood treatment, right? That could be looked at very differently now because times have changed. Do you think that puts into question the judicial system? And is there enough time and resources to revisit all these cases for people?
Whether there are resources and time, there may not be, but there are people who are doing this work. The judge that this case is before, that's all he does. The new judge, William Ryan, he's in the Court of Claims, the Ritz Court, and he basically hears these habeas claims for defendants who claim they were wrongfully convicted, and he's been doing it for 30 years. So the case is now before someone who does this for a living. Other people do get access to that judge, but it's a very narrow portion of the population who gets access, and obviously, if you have money and or somewhat notoriety in order to get your voice heard, obviously it's an advantage.
What do you think is going to happen to these brothers?
If I had to guess, I'd say they're probably getting out.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow.
I would say it's powerful evidence. You know, there's a lot of pressure on people, but times, like you said, times have changed. People's views of these things have changed.
So you do work now for the Foundation Law Group, right, which is here in Southern California, Silicon Valley, Pacific, Northwest. It's virtual.
Yes.
What exactly does your firm do? Foundation
Law Group, it's a partnership of 20 lawyers who do litigation, corporate and finance, employment. I do white-collar criminal defense. It's a distributed law firm, so basically the lawyers are, like you said, in Silicon Valley, distributed throughout LA. But because we're virtual, we basically work together, but each of the individual lawyers kind of essentially control their own destiny and their own practice with respect to their clients, which gives a lot of flexibility to the lawyers. When I worked at a big firm, relative to then, you know, our flexible fee arrangements are 20, 30, 40% less, but you're still getting lawyers with 20, 25 years of experience in federal court, state court, and in complex transactions. So it's an advantage at some level that we think we offer to clients, so that's kind of the focus of the firm.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate for you coming in, talking about all of this. Your insight is much appreciated. We'll be watching all of us, of course, to see what happens on Friday. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.